feel free to go ahead and turn your camera off. And I will go on mute as well. And Aubrey, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, I can't teach if I'm on mute. I've tried, it doesn't work. So my name is Aubrey Eriksdotter. For those who don't know me, I am the current Kingdom Chronicler. So this class is a how to make a newsletter, but we're going to approach it from the point of view of how the Kingdom newsletter is put together. So that way it gives you some good tips for generic newsletters, but it also gives you an idea of the Kingdom newsletter. So if you ever are interested in applying for that position, you already have a familiarity with this. So the program that we use for the newsletter currently is called Scribus. It's a free software. You can download it, and then it's really easy to work with. So one of the most important things for any newsletter is your cover page. This is where you generate interest. It's what grabs people's attention. So for the Black Star, of course, we have the name of the newsletter, the month, year. At the bottom of the cover page, we have that this is the newsletter for the Kingdom of Onsteora, the volume, issue. So the issue changes with each month, and then the volume changes with each chronicler. So there have been 57 chroniclers of Onsteora, including myself. And then, of course, the SCA year. So at the top, it's got the modern year, and then at the bottom, it's got the SCA year, or the SCA year. So it's really easy to add pictures and whatnot, as long as they're in PDF. We pretty much, for the Black Star, only use PDF and Word or Word document type. So you could send, you could have text in a Google Doc, and that works fine because the STA is a Google-based platform, or we use the Google-based platform, but PDF works the best. So to insert an image, you just have insert image frame. You make it wherever you want it. And it's just like anything you've worked with on like Word or other programs like that. You adjust the size by the arrows, right? Not a big deal. And then to get your image, you right click and get image. And then you get it from wherever it's at. Now, this is where it can get a little tricky. The place that you're pulling from, there's not even anything there. Let's see. Oh yeah, we can also use JPEGs. There we go. So for photos, a lot of times it'll be a JPEG article, or event ads or PDFs. So you'll notice it's way too big, right? It doesn't fit the frame. It's really easy to adjust that. You can adjust the frame to the image. And if I do that way big, no way I can work with that. But I can adjust the image to the frame. Of course, now that I've already done the other one, it won't let me fix it, but it's really easy to undo it. Just delete it and start over. I wind up doing that a lot. If I pick the wrong thing to adjust and I don't like the way it adjusts, I have found that a lot of times it's just easier to delete it and start over, because it takes less time than trying to finagle to make it fit. So there's the adjusting image to the frame, and it fits right in my frame. And then you'll notice though, it doesn't fill the frame completely, and it just has to do with the size and orientation of your image and your frame. So that's why sometimes if you do the adjust frame to image, it works better, because then it'll shrink and stay in the same proportion. But that's just one of those things that each photo is a little bit different, because I can continue to move the frame. It's not going to change it. So usually I wind up just recentering everything. One thing about images. So I pulled that out of the February folder. If I were to move this newsletter, like let's say I saved it and I go to reopen it. If I move the newsletter into a new folder, it will lose that image. I'll show you exactly what it'll do. Hold on, let me scroll down. It will have red X's like that. And what that tells me is that this newsletter is no longer where it was when I imported this image in the first place. I moved it into a different folder. So that's one thing you have to watch out for when you go to shift these around, is that anytime you change the destination, it'll give you a red X. And then you have to delete it and reinstall it. So for the Kingdom newsletter, the format is pretty much the same, chronicler to chronicler. There's some things you can change, like the cover page has to be the cover page. The back page has to be only a half a page. The top half has to be blank. This is from when they folded them in half and put the mailing address on the side. They still mail it that way. So you have to have this top half blank. If you're making your own newsletter and it's not going to be mailed anywhere, you could have this back page completely full. You could do a full page. If you're mailing it, you have to leave this top half blank. That's a postage requirement, because you have to be able to put the label of the address. You have to be able to put your return address and your postage at the top. So if you're making your own newsletter, that would be something that you would have to take into account if you're going to mail it or not. For the Black Star, we have to have the top half blank because there are still some being mailed. On the back page, you have to have the calendar. And then I still have on here all the notation, even though it's not in this calendar anymore. But if someone were to go to the Kingdom calendar and go, well, I don't really know what HP stands for. You know, it's right here that that's Heirs Progress or Heirs Presence. So I still have this key on here because sometimes the calendar deputy will send me the calendar with the notes still in it. And I want to make sure anybody looking at this calendar can read it. Anymore, it's gotten to where I just go to the Kingdom website myself and I just make my own calendar. And then page 15 is the directory. For the SCA, we no longer include physical mailing addresses. That used to be something we had to have. For a lot of offices, we no longer include them. It's outdated. Nobody mails anyone anything anyway. And two, it became a safety issue in a lot of circumstances. The one problem with this directory, and if you make a newsletter where you have a directory, this is something you'll run into. I can't update the directory until the person emails me or the directory deputy saying, you have my permission to put this information in the newsletter. So sometimes things will be several months out of date. And part of that has to do with the overlap. So the newsletter is always a month in advance. I am currently making the April newsletter. I have to have it submitted before the 7th, which is why event ad deadlines are due by the 1st, so that I have time to put them in. But that means that the April newsletter gets published March 12th to 15th, somewhere in that time frame. But so if somebody has an officer change in March, I won't be able to change it until like the May Black Star. So it can be 2 months behind. Like, I know that North Keeps B&B is about to transition, but I won't be able to change this until after it's been selected and they contact me and let me know. So even if I know who it is, I can't change their names until they tell me. And that's one thing people forget. So if you have your own newsletter and you have any kind of directory with mundane information in it, you have to have their permission to publish. A lot of times the release we use just says you have my permission to publish the following information, and they put name, phone number, whatever they want. And then it says for the duration of my time in office, or something to that effect. So you'll notice that, let's see, those are deputy offices. Let me find the Kingdom one. There's me. It's not the one I'm looking for. There it is. The Exchequer, we do still publish their physical address. That was specifically on their request because the checks for the heraldic submissions are mailed directly to them. And any treasurer, any treasurer can mail those. They're the only people handling the money, but that way they can easily find it without having to, okay, I'll need you, in order to make that change, either email me at kingdom@chronicler.onsteora.org, or email the directory deputy. There is a form that I need you to fill out for the Black Star specifically to make a change. That applies to any office. If you know of an office that's changed, but thank you for letting me know. If you know of an office that's changed, make sure that you tell them to email me or the directory deputy so that we can update that. There's a form we fill out, and we use the same form for all office notifications so that it's consistent in the Google files. So, but that's the Kingdom directory. If you're making your own SCA newsletter, you don't have to have a directory like this. You only have to have offices, your officers, sorry. If you're making a newsletter for some other group, then whether or not you list people's name, that's entirely up to your group. Just be aware of, it's not copyright, but of publication concerns with publishing mundane names and phone numbers and addresses and that kind of stuff. In the SCA, we don't publish addresses anymore. So you can see that I had a PDF here, and I've moved the location of the newsletter, so it's now a big X, and I can just delete it and input anything else I want. One thing that's really handy when you're if you have multiple things on a page, is to have a dividing line. So all of these lines that you can see on the screen, these blue lines right here that outline the page, these don't show up in the PDF. So you have to create borders if you want them to show up. So this was a artwork piece here, and then this was the notification about the 2021 Gulf War. And since they're not the same thing, I wanted this divider line. So if you insert, there's an insert line. And then it's just like what you've worked with before. It's kind of a little challenging to make this one be perfectly straight though. But there's your line. And you can always pull things out. Something cool about Scribus is if I made something, but I don't want it on this page, but I don't want to delete it, I can just move it off to the side. When I turn this into a PDF, you don't see that. It's no longer there. It's just in the Scribus file. So then the next time I go to make the newsletter, I'm like, oh, I need a line. I can just grab this and put it wherever I want. That's something really handy. You'll notice if I scroll back up, I have the Herald badge. I have the title for a whole bunch of, like, so this last newsletter, or this training one, when I made this newsletter, I didn't have anything to put in from the Earl Marshal or the Rapier Marshal or whatnot. So I just pulled those off to the side rather than deleting them, because I don't want to recreate the wheel every single month when I make the newsletter. I use each previous month's as a template, and I take out the stuff I don't need and I add the stuff I do need. That if you're making a reoccurring newsletter, whether it's for your shire or for your canton or your barony or whatever, using your previous one as a template is going to make your life so much easier. Either that, or you make a straight template that then you redo each month. There is, let me find it. Yeah, under edit, master pages, that would be where if you had a base template that you reuse each time, it's on your master page. So like each one has, I gotta pick. On the left page, at the bottom of every single left page in the Black Star, it says the Black Star. On the right page, at the bottom of each right-hand page, it says the month, the year, and then the mundane year. And so I don't make that change on each page in the Blackstar. I change it on the master. So it's changing my template each time. So there are some things that we do on a template and some things that I use the previous one as a template. So like I don't ever have to change the page numbers. I just have to change the stuff that's in it. Clip art is super easy to insert in Scribus. Again, you just insert your frame, your image frame, and then select it. If you have, I didn't mean to do that, but that's all right. If you have text that you want to insert, like if I had typed this up as a Word doc or on Google or something, I could insert it as text. As opposed to an image. But you do it the exact same way. You get your text, but it's got to come from, obviously I don't have anything there to do. Let's see. I don't remember what file it has to be. Oh wait, it says right here. Yeah, usually it's going to be a doc. So that's what I would be looking for. Yeah, I don't have anything handy. So, but that way you can insert your text directly without having to do copy and paste. It's a formatting issue. I do copy and paste a lot, but sometimes if I have a whole lot of text to paste, if it's a single page document, I just do it this way and just pull the whole thing in. The officer reports that I get each month from the different officers, I just copy and paste those. There's always going to be a little bit of a formatting difference. And as a person making the newsletter, you also have to edit and check for grammar and punctuation and spacing. That's true of any newsletter, SCA, Monday, whatever. Most people tend to check for their own grammar and spelling and whatnot, but you'd be amazed how a simple, typo can change the whole way something reads. And I usually will not even find it. So what I do is I make the newsletter, I check stuff as I put it in, I make sure I have everything, I save it as a PDF, and then I proofread the PDF. Because there are things that'll look okay in Scribus that then look weird in the PDF. And since I have to submit my newsletter as a PDF, I want to make sure it looks good in the PDF form. If you are doing a newsletter for your local group, you have to submit yours as a PDF as well. So you're ultimately going to want to check your PDF. If you're doing your newsletter in any other format, if you're doing Word or Works or Google Docs, that's fine. You can make it however you want, but you must save it as a PDF before you distribute it. Okay, it's a copyright issue. So if you put your newsletters on your webpage, they have to be in PDF. If you put them on your Facebook page, it's got to be a PDF. Just please make sure that you are doing that. The Blackstar includes a table of contents. This takes forever sometimes to update, because if I don't remember to write down each thing and what page it's on while I'm putting it together, when I make my table of contents, I'm scrolling back and forth 1,001 times, and it just drives me crazy. So I have lots of scratch paper that you can't see because of my background. But I keep scratch paper right beside my computer when I'm working on the Blackstar, which is why there's a handful there right now, because I've been working on this next month's Blackstar. All right, so newsletters, cover page, make it pretty, make it interesting. You have to have all your disclaimers, your copyright stuff, the list of where all your artwork comes from, where your articles. So like here I have the artwork, and if somebody had submitted a poem, I would have that here, because the Blackstar, we put all the credits right here. On a local newsletter, you can do the same thing. You can have your credits all in one spot, or you can put it on the page with the submission. I tend to do both, actually. except for the cover art. I only put it on this page because I'm not going to distract from the cover art by putting credits on the front page. But so if someone gives you an article, you have to cite it somewhere. You can do it on the page with the article or wherever you put all your copyright stuff. But you have to have the copyright, you have to have the disclaimer, you have to have all your official blah, blah, blah stuff, all your fine print, whatever you want to call it. For the Black Star, at least we put it all together. It's all on page 2. Let's see, and then we do, make sure if you're using clip art, you still cite that, even if it's free clip art. So like right here, I have that clip art is from the Dover collection, unless it's otherwise stated. I use Dover for everything because we already bought the subscription a long time ago, so I can use it as much as I want. Oops, wrong button. Let me pull up the chat. All right, come on, Zoom. I'm on the wrong end of my keypad and the touch is working. Are you talking about for the Dover, Zebediah? You can unmute yourself if you want to ask. Oh, wait, let's see. Oh, so we talk about it when they do the class. So anytime we get a new chronicler, they have to attend training. And that's something that we cover in the training are the copyright minders, the policies, how to put together your local newsletters. We go through all that because copyright's one of the few things in the chronicler's office that you can get in trouble for. Violating copyright can get you in legal trouble. So you have to make sure you follow it. And so we do cover that in the chronicler's training. And part of the appointing a new chronicler, we tell everybody is if you can't attend red tape, you have to contact your regional and get trained within 30 days because it is a legal issue. So there is some, the instructions are also in the handbook, which every chronicler should access on the website. Okay. So does that answer all of your questions? Yes. Okay. Thank you. That's a good question. Thank you for asking. All right. Let's see. Oh, and this is different for each group. If you're doing a local newsletter, can have it be as short as you want. It can be as long as you want. It can be as colorful as you want. The Kingdom newsletter, I can make it as colorful as I want, but they only print black and white. So I try to keep that in mind because any picture I put on there is going to be printed in black and white. The only exception to that is the January cover is printed in color. That's part of the contract that we have with the publisher is that the January cover of all the newsletters are printed in color. Everything else is black and white. The biggest difference between a local newsletter and the Kingdom newsletter is that the Kingdom newsletter must be 16 pages. Must be 16 pages. No more, no less. The number is 16. It is not 15. It will not be. I know Kat's laughing at me because she's heard me give the spiel before. I give it a lot because people don't understand how frustrating it can be when someone goes, well, just make it longer. If they send me, if it has been such a unique year for chroniclers, even with COVID, Kingdom newsletters still had to be 16 pages. We didn't have event ads to run, but it still had to be 16 pages. In a couple of months, when we start going back to full-time eventing and there are 3 or 4 events every single month, I'll have 25 event ads to run in a month and I still have to have 16 pages. And the cover page is the cover page and the back page is the back page and the directory is the directory. So I really can't do anything with those 3 pages. So I really have 14 pages. So people hear that spiel from me a lot because I have legitimately had a seneschal argue with me because I told them that they were running an early event ad. And I told them I could only run an early event ad if it was a half page because I didn't have room for full page early event ads. And they argued with me for 20 minutes about the fact that I could just add another page. I really can't. It has to do with the contract with the publisher, and that's a corporate decision, not a kingdom decision. I can't change that. So, great fun. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this screen. And then I want to take a little bit of time to answer questions. It can be related to Scribus. It can be related to newsletters in general, the Chronicles office, whatever you want to ask. And so you can put it in chat, or if you want to unmute yourself. I think I went faster this time, Kat, than I did at Winter Kingdom.
That's okay, no problem.
Look, no one has questions. This is what happens to me when I teach at school, too.
Just means you did a good job.
No, it does not.
I have a question, but it's not about creating a newsletter, Aubrey.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Excuse me. I know that on the kingdom level, the historian is actually a deputy chronicler. Is that how that works?
Yes.
How does it work at a local level? Is the local historian a deputy of the local chronicler? Does it mimic the kingdom at the local level?
No, the historian's completely independent on the local level.
Okay. Ours just became vacant recently, and I didn't know if that fell under my purview on trying. Of course, I would encourage people anyway, but I just didn't know if it mimics the kingdom level and what if I needed to be doing more. Thank you.
No, because really the historian is not an official office. It's not listed anywhere as an official office. So technically it would always be a deputy office. We don't really treat it that way on the local level because it's one of those kind of, if somebody wants to do it, awesome, but we don't push to fill it a lot of times. But on the kingdom level, it has to be listed as a deputy office because it's not considered its own office. It's really weird the way some of that stuff is set up. Any other questions?
And it gets more complicated because sometimes the web minister thinks that the historian / wiki administrator is one of their deputies as well.
Right. Well, and you're the first person to combine the historian with the wiki. And so I imagine it's even more complicated for you. But we love you.
As far as I know, I'm my own deputy. It gets confusing sometimes.
I bet so.
I have a question, but it's from a historian point of view.
Uh-oh. Hold on 1 second. Let me get Charles's question first because he had unmuted himself first, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Charles, go ahead.
Oh, okay, thanks. So how much longer are we going to be mailing out physical copies?
As far as I know of, forever.
Neat. Okay.
I have not heard any discussion about eliminating that at all, because that's entirely a self-pay thing. People pay for it. The kingdom doesn't. So I imagine as long as there are enough people paying for it to justify the expense, it will continue. If people stop purchasing it, then I would imagine it goes away. I don't think there's any written requirement that we have to physically mail it, but it has to be made available to anyone who wants it. And all someone has to say is, I don't have internet. And then we have to provide a mailed copy, or at least a way to get it to them. So I think as long as that's an issue that we have to be able to make sure they can get it, then it's going to continue being a mailed option.
Thank you.
All right, Catherine, you had a question?
Yes. How far back does the Kingdom Chronicler have copies of the Black Star?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't have physical copies. We've pretty much gotten rid of all the physical copies. We don't keep them. Um, they get, because everything's digital.
Yeah.
I receive a physical copy to distribute to people who give me submissions for the Black Star. So like if somebody did an article this month, I would mail them a copy, a courtesy copy as a thank you for your submission. Also, some people
Whoops.
require that as part of their submission. There's a spot on the form where they can actually put, I'm making this submission, but I require a copy. So the publisher sends me a set number of copies so that I can mail those out to the different people. And then I'm given my own personal copy as the Kingdom Chronicler, but we don't keep the physical copies in the Kingdom Chronicler's files anymore, because I used to have 2 giant boxes full of old Black Stars. And the problem is, and this has happened in a lot of groups, the something caught on fire or something flooded, or and everything gets destroyed. So we just don't even really try to keep physical copies anymore. I think the historian office has some. I know that at one point they were working on trying to get them all scanned in, some of the old ones that aren't digital, but I don't know. Zebediah, do you have physical copies?
I do, and I am in the process of scanning them.
Right.
I have a Google document that's open to anybody to view that shows what specific issues I have, and which ones I have scanned and have ready. So if you are looking for a specific issue, I can check my records. But yeah, that's an ongoing project. And then eventually, I want to create an index of what is in each of those issues. So if you're looking for a specific article or event review or death notice or flyer or whatever on the wiki, it's going to list every single issue of the Black Star and what was in it. Not a copy of the document, but simply an index of what was in it, so that if somebody needs to find a specific item, they can search for it and then request, that, hey, does anybody have a copy? Because I don't think I can provide them my electronic copy, but
That's correct. Yeah, there's a lot of technicalities that go into this project. It's an awesome project, and I'm glad the previous historian had started it, and then Zebediah stepped in and is doing an awesome job. But because of copyright, so we used to not do copyright. People used to not have to fill out releases. As time progresses and we become more and more aware of these things, rules change. So back in 15 years ago, we didn't do releases. In fact, the last time I was Kingdom Chronicler, we had just started doing releases. I was the second chronicler to have to deal with them, and really the first one to have to deal with it hardcore. But so editions that were published before that don't have releases. So while she's scanning them in and is going to create that index, she can't turn around and send it out to someone unless we know we have a release on file for that article or for that artwork, or which is why she can't just make the whole Black Star electronically available. And it's been kind of a headache. And this applies to any local one too. I know that there's a couple of people that are working on pulling together old editions of their newsletter for anniversary events and whatnot. But if you have the physical copy in your hand, someone could look at it, but you can't scan it and then share it electronically unless you contact everyone who's in there to get a release. And it just, and then if they've passed away, you have to contact their next of kin, and it's just a mess.
Part of my other question, because I'm working on a historical project too, is I'm trying to find the earliest Black Star. I know they were cataloged because I work in libraries mundanely. I'm trying to find the earliest one that still has a directory of all the branches in Stiora. Many of those branches are no longer around, but I'm doing a map project where I am putting every name that was ever published in the Black Star, putting that branch on a map. And I'm
Well, that's kind of cool.
trying to find it. I know it went back to the 70s. I have a few that are 78, I think. I have to go back and look because I have a bunch of the physical copies I've been given by several people. And I'm just trying to find the earliest directory I can find so I can put it on the map. Because a lot of these, like I said, a lot of these groups died out and they're no longer spoken of. In fact, I only found out a couple months ago that we had 2 groups on the Rio Grande in Del Rio and Zapata. And I didn't know that before. So that's part of my project I've been doing for the past 2 or 3 years now. Get all through the Black Stars, get all the information about the groups, when they appeared in the Black Star, when they left the Black Star, and then put it on this map. Actually, I set up 3 maps, a main map, and then it's divided into north and south.
Right. So that would be something that you would definitely want to email the historian about and just say, here's the ones I have. Can you fill in any of the gaps?
Yes, Zabeda knows what I've been doing.
Well, there you go. Okay.
That's just why I was, because I know you at one time were scanning all the Chronicler was scanning all of the Black Stars.
Well, that's always been the historian doing that. Yeah.
Okay.
So she's taken over that project. The previous couple of historians had started working on it. Let me see. Okay. To answer the question, yeah, the archivist does receive a copy of the Black Star each month. That's one of the ones I have to submit to, but he receives a digital copy. So the Black Star each month is sent to the publication person. It's sent to the publication manager. She takes all the newsletters from all the different kingdoms in the society, and then she sends them to the publisher. And then I send it to the society chronicler, who is my boss, and then I send one to the archivist. And so those are the 3 people that I submit it to each month. But yeah, they all 3 get digital copies.
I would love to dive into all that, just to find history. Well, I work in libraries. I work in library services. I've been doing that for over 40 years. So this is my need, is finding things that hadn't been looked at in a long time.
Zebediah, are you talking about digitally or paper?
Digital.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant. So, do you want me to make a note of that in my chroniclers classes to include a courtesy copy to the historian?
That would be super duper awesome.
Okay. So we already, we tell people, the chroniclers, when we train them, they have to send a copy to their B&B. They have to provide the newsletter to their populace, but the people they report to would be the regional and the kingdom. And then we suggest that they send a courtesy copy to the crown, the heirs, if there are any, the archivist, and I will add historian onto that list. So they will know to include a courtesy copy to you. All right.
They
No
used
problem.
to do a kind of a thing where each of the chroniclers of the branches sent some copies to the other branches.
Yeah, that becomes very much a personal thing of do they want to receive it? Some branches do and some branches don't. And so we don't include that as part of the required training, because people already get enough emails as it is. We don't want them getting extra stuff that they're not asking for. But we do tell our local chroniclers that they can contact other groups to ask for event ads or other stuff if they want to coordinate. So a lot of times people will pull event ads from the Black Star to put in their local newsletter. or they'll contact other groups in the region going, hey, do you have anything coming up so that I can put it in my newsletter? So there's a lot of that happens.
Yeah, I inherited some chronicler, 3 boxes of chronicler publications.
That just
and
sounds like
other
a
stuff.
mess.
Yeah, they're in my storage right now because I'll get to them when I can get to them. And sort of, I've been digging into them for historian stuff, for the Black
Right.
Stars and stuff. But there's some interesting history there about groups and your own group. Like Stargate is the first barony. It's the
Right.
first group in Anstiora. So there's a lot of history that I'm digging into.
Right. All right. Anybody have any other questions or comments or?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
You mentioned other groups pulling ads for events from the Black Star to use in their own group newsletter. Is there any kind of paperwork required in that? Do they need a separate release because it's a separate publication? Do they need your permission? How does that work?
So the event ad itself, because it's public, it becomes public by being published in the Black Star, and I have the release to publish. So so here's the deal with event ads. They come to me by means of the Seneschal, who has approved all of the stuff that it's all correct and it's accurate, whatnot. They don't actually do a release for the event ad. So because they don't have to fill out a release for it, they just send it to me. Then anybody can pull it out of the Black Star. It's basically public access.
What about the artist who did the calligraphy or illumination on it?
So it all depends on how they fill out the release. If the artist fills out the release for their art for the event ad that specifically says for publication in the Black Star only, then yes, they can't pull it because they don't have the release. Most event ads don't have artwork that has to have a release anyway, because usually it's just clip art or it's artwork that belongs to the barony and is open. Anybody can use it as long as they're not changing it. But if, like, for instance, if Isaac were to do artwork for the event ad and his release said for the Black Star only, which it doesn't, but if it did, then if another group were to pull that event ad and use it, I would have to tell them that they can't use it and they would have to pull it out of their newsletter.
Do they just email you to find out about that before they? Okay, so
yeah, if a local chronicler is looking at the Black Star and they go, oh, I want to run this event ad, but it has artwork on it, then yes, they should definitely email me and say, hey, I want to use this event ad. What's the release is like? Now, most of the time, event ads in the Black Star, because it's one big PDF kind of program, it's not easy to pull it straight. So usually if someone wants the event ad itself, they just email me anyway and say, hey, can you send me the event ad? And I can do that. And then at that point, I already know the specifics of the artwork.
So that eliminates some of the concern there. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So question about maps needing releases, it depends. So if you hand draw a map to a site, then yes, you have to fill out the release. If you use some graphic program, then technically you still have to fill out a release because you made it. There is a free source mapping program that we did get permission from society to be able to use. And so that source would not need a release. And you cannot use a mapping program like Google Maps or what are any of the, I don't even know any other ones anymore. What was the one
commercially copyrighted?
Right. MapQuest.
MapQuest, yeah.
I was like, what's the one we all used to use? But you can't use
you had to
those.
print it out, and it was like 10 pages for like 4 turns.
But that was what we all used to use. But but yeah, you can't use that because it's a commercial. You can't use Google Maps because it's a commercially owned. If you hand draw a map, yes, you have to have a release. But there is one that I have permission for. So if you need a map for your event ad and you don't want to draw it, contact me and I can give you the information for that. I'm pretty sure I made it publicly available when I found out we could use it, but chroniclers change and not everybody remembers. Blah, blah, blah.
Now,
All
are
right.
you talking like a geographic map for like where groups are, or like even something as simple as a site map that was loosely drawn to tell where gate and court are going to be?
So
Or
it
both?
depends on what you're doing with it. If you've made a map that you are going to put in a newsletter and publish, you have to have a release. Even if it's the map to site, even if it's the map of site, whichever. If it's in there, it's because it's considered artwork. So if you draw something, you have to have the release.
That makes sense. I wouldn't have considered that as artwork, but
right.
I mean, if it was someone more skillful than I at drawing, I can see how it definitely could be.
Right.
Mine would just look like some kind of stick figure, chicken scratch, square here, square there.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of that, but it's still technically considered artwork. The map that we looked at that we got permission for is openstreetmap.org. So if you need to make a map or get one off of, I've never even looked at it. I just know that society said, yes, we can use it. So one of the Southern groups uses it. So that one doesn't need a release other than you would just have to somewhere put, map from Open Street Source or whatever it was. All right. Any other questions? And they're crickets. I really should do that for school. I should get a recording of crickets. And when I ask that, push play.
That would be cute. Thank you so much for teaching. I appreciate it. Lots of great information. I'm sure everyone else appreciates it as well. And I will get the recording posted probably over the weekend. And, thanks everybody for attending.
And always feel free to email the Kingdom Chronicler or the Regional Chronicler if you have questions, because, there's a lot of information that we just don't know to tell people unless they ask a question. So,
yep.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Bye.